The Book of Psalms, Psalms 9, delivering the helpless from oppression. Originally, Psalms 9 and 10 were one psalm. Together these psalms form an acrostic, that is, an alphabetical psalm, and Psalm 10 picks up right where Psalm 9 leaves off. As we will see, the psalm contains numerous linguistic and thematic links. The Septuagint, in fact, preserves them as one psalm. But what a contrast these psalms form! Psalms 10 is a lament and appears to contradict the praise of Psalms 9 almost point by point. In Psalms 9, the conflict is largely past and was staged between the speaker and the wicked nations. In Psalms 10, the conflict is very present and is staged between the wicked and the helpless, implying social oppression within the nation. How can these psalms be seen to work together? After closer examination, we shall discover that the I of the psalm speaks as a representative on behalf of the helpless. When viewed as a whole, Psalms 9 appears to appeal to Yahweh's past, praiseworthy judgments, especially regarding the nations, as precedents for how he should intervene in the current social unrest within Israel and Judah, as described in Psalms 10 in verse 16. Psalms 9 and 10 contain no hints about how it was used and about its date, because it contains many phrases found elsewhere in the Psalms, and because it is an acrostic, it has the style of an anthology. This may point to its function as literature to be read, not as liturgy to be performed orally. If so, a post-exilic date is likely because it would have been during the exile that the once liturgical psalms became literature. Psalms 9 contains three themes. In verses 1 to 6 is thanksgiving. In verses 7 to 12 is a hymnic praise. And in verse 13 to 20 is a prayer psalm, with an opening and a closing petition. In verses 1 to 12, this section consists of thanksgiving in verses 1 to 6 and hymnic praise in 7 to 12. The thanksgiving opens with the usual proclamations of praise. I will tell of all your wonders in verses 1 and 2. With one significant alteration, thanksgiving characteristically praises God for a specific, recent deliverance of an individual, but this praise appears to be summative in nature. The reference to the utter destruction of the nations and their cities in the body of the thanksgiving is reminiscent of the conquest of the land. My enemies may refer to any who have, in the recent or distant past, opposed the people of Zion, not to a particular group personally, attacking the speaker. Similarly, the nations and the wicked mentioned in verses 15 and 16 may simply illustrate the premise: the Lord is known by his justice, and have no direct connection to the speaker's immediate distress, where later generations identify themselves with earlier generations in God's mighty acts. The Lord brought us out of Egypt. Yahweh is depicted in the role of judge, not warrior, in both this thanksgiving in verses 4 and the hymnic praise that follows in verses 7 and 8. These hymnic praises celebrate Yahweh's international judgment in the same terms as the Psalms of Yahweh's kingship. Why this judgment is something to look forward to, not the inclination of most Christians when thinking of divine judgment today. is explained in verses 9 and 10. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed. The case before the divine judge is a civil suit between the wicked and the oppressed, not a criminal case between Yahweh and the sinner. This is not a situation where God prosecutes sinners on the basis of His absolute righteousness, but a case where the speaker, as the advocate for the oppressed, prosecutes the wicked on the basis of relative social justice, where actions are measured. Yahweh is He who avenges blood, and thus acts in response to the cry of the afflicted. Closing off this section of the praise is the command, "Sing praises to the Lord." Such an imperative call to praise is normally addressed to a congregation, but it may be that it simply suits the Psalms' alphabetical form. While verses 7 and 8 draw from the traditions of the Psalms of Yahweh's kingship, verses 11 draws from the traditions of the songs of Zion. In verses 13 to 20, this section consists of motives belonging to a prayer psalm. There are opening and closing petitions. There is also a vow of praise that is attached thanksgiving, said in anticipation of deliverance. The opening petition concerns my enemies, and the closing petition, the nations, which together form the same dual designation used for the opponents in the earlier thanksgiving. The image of gates links this section opening petition with its vow of praise. The speaker anticipates being transported from the gates of death to the gates of the daughter of Zion. Verses 15 to 18 offer a foretaste of the thanksgiving that will follow the deliverance. In these verses we hear the same twin themes found in the hymnic praises of verses 7 to 10, namely Yahweh's international judgment on the wicked and His protection of the afflicted. The fairness of His justice is exhibited by the wicked becoming their own victims, self-retribution. The closing petitions appeal to creation order, implying the opponents seek to overstep their creaturely status. Let no man triumph, and let the nations know they are but men. My brothers and sisters, Psalms 9 is a mix of praise and petition, celebration and setback. David is praising God in verses 1 to 2 for His power over his enemies and continual presence with David during the battle. In the midst of David's praise, he's either reminded of the old battle injuries or experiences, a setback in battle. Rather than giving into despair or questioning God's love and power, David affirms the destiny of the wicked. In conclusion, David affirms God's provision of hope for the downcast and petitions God for victory over his persistent enemy. This psalm reminds us that God is more powerful than our enemies and is concerned for our struggles. We can and should turn to God in the midst of our struggles. Even while we praise God and pray to God, we may still suffer. This should not stop our desire to praise the God whose character never changes. Thank you, and God bless.